So this week we are looking at sense-making routines in a remote
Good morning.
environment.
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Good morning. Sorry, I'm late.
That's okay. Welcome. So reminder, I am Tina Cardone. I work at the Center of Math Achievement at Lesley University, and we're able to do these workshops through the wonders of the Biogen grant. So we have teachers from both Somerville and Cambridge here, which is why your intro question that you're going to type in the chat includes what district do you work in, and then what is your role, and are there sense-making routines that you can think of in the moment that you use in your classroom? And feel free to define classroom as Google Classroom or physical classroom. I'm going to type those in the chat now. All right, looks like we have lots of people who are doing Notice and Wonder, which is perfect because that's what we're going to do first. And I saw algebra chats, number chats, math talks. There are like 15 different names for those. And those are going to be in our next week workshop, so that'll work out nicely. So we just did introductions and welcome. We're going to look at Notice and Wonder first. And just like previous weeks, we're going to spend some time with you in the student perspective and then some time thinking about the teacher perspective. Then we'll repeat that process for which one doesn't belong. And then you'll have a good chunk of time to build your own of whichever of those you would like. Or if this inspires some other alternative idea, you're going to be welcome to do that as well in your building time. And as always, feel free to ask questions throughout this time. You don't need to wait until the very end to pose questions either in the chat or just unmute and speak up when you've got ideas. So we're going to start with Notice and Wonder. So I'm going to give you 1 minute to independently and silently think about what do you notice and what do you wonder about this image. And then I'm going to send you into breakout rooms to do this next part. So be ready to do that in 1 minute. All right, so I'm putting in the chat a link to a copy of the slides. So I'm going to send you into either breakout room 1, breakout room 2, or breakout room 3. And if you look at the slides, slides 6, 7, and 8 are each labeled with your breakout room number. So once you get into your breakout room, you're going to work with your team to figure out what you noticed and what you wondered and record those ideas on the slides. Any questions before I send you out? I was in a breakout room last night and I noticed a new ask for help button. So if anyone has that ask for help button, can you hit it so that I can figure out what that button does? I was scared to hit it last night because I was in a really big group. All right, I'm sending you now. Joel, do you have a pop-up to join a breakout room? All right, welcome back. So Elisa kindly pushed the ask for help button, and we learned that if you are the host, when someone pushes their ask for help button in the breakout room, it pops up with a window that said, this username asked for help, and you can hit a button directly to join their breakout room so that you don't have to figure out, like, we've figured out things like, oh, you can send a message through this other platform to ask me for help if you're in the thing, or even like flag something, but I didn't have to figure out how to join the room because there was a button right there. So I appreciate that new feature being added, and that's a good one to continue using if you're using Zoom during the school year. So what is this notice and wonder routine? So you just experienced it. So thinking about both from the student side, what did you experience while being asked to notice and wonder? And also as a teacher, when do you choose to use the notice and wonder routine?
We usually use it at the beginning of a class, kind of just to activate their thinking, get them just to start thinking about something math related. Sometimes it's the focus, like we were talking about in our room. Sometimes you continue to use whatever it is, whether it's a table or a picture throughout the lesson, and sometimes it kind of stands on its own.
Yeah, so in the lesson that I pulled this one from, the warm-up is to notice and wonder about this particular graph. And then throughout the lesson, they use a variety of other similar looking graphs, but not this exact one. I actually looked it up because I was curious. I was like, oh, well, what does it actually mean? What are the answers to all of these lovely wonderings that you are asking here? And there's no answer of what this data actually represents written into the lesson, which I always think is interesting. It's okay to wonder about things and then not be able to find the answer. What else?
So I think one of the things that's really great about notice and wonder exercises is a very low or a very low point of entry for all students. So it gives a chance for me to call on kids that normally do not like to share in class, for them to have something that they can contribute that is valuable, that other people are noticing or wondering, and get them kind of involved in the discussion early on. As Alyssa pointed out, I also often use these as a so it just kind of sets the tone for the class that everybody can participate and everybody can certainly notice and wonder something about practically anything.
Awesome.
It can also just be really nice when you have students that don't talk very much, or a class that doesn't talk very much, because they have to talk to each other in this activity. And like Stu was saying, they all have something to offer, so it makes them feel comfortable talking to each other.
Yeah, and I think that that's an important thing to be thinking about. Of it's got the whole structure of I have individual think time to come up with my idea, and then pair or small group conversation, and then that whole class, so that way it does feel really safe to cold call a student because they've already had time to think and time to talk to their neighbors. And yes, Amy, right, like everyone has an answer to this, and even if it's not the answer that's related to the mathematical idea that you're aiming for later, we're validating all of students' ideas.
I think in the beginning, if it's the first thing, the first time that you give it to the students, the first few times I make them write down their notice and wonders, like, in their notebook. And sometimes I refer to their, whatever they wrote. And at that point, it makes them, as I said, it's a low floor, high ceiling. People have already said that, but it actually, I make it a point to say that there is no wrong answer. Just at the beginning, when it's the first time they're doing it, I emphasize that there is no wrong answer and everybody has something to say. So that, again, the people who are not comfortable sharing could share.
Awesome. Any additional thoughts about the structure of how we just did this? So I presented the information on a slide. I gave you a minute to think, and then I sent you out into breakout rooms. So it doesn't match exactly what I would do in a classroom, but it felt similar enough that it seemed like it would work.
I think the point that Hans just made about writing it down is always valuable. I ask always, actually, even after we've done it many, many times, please write down at least 2 things that you notice and at least 1 thing you wonder. With 6th graders, it is often helpful to give them specific goals about what your expectation is and what, about how much they should be finding here.
Yeah, those specifics are really helpful to push students past their, I wrote down 2 words.
I like Stu's idea of saying write down 2 things you notice to be specific, and I also like using this specific instruction: read me what you wrote, because if we want to get kids used to the kind of skills they'll have to do without even like noticing it in college, one of the things is writing, just writing your thoughts pretty quickly. You have to do that a lot in college. And so, when you say read me what you wrote, you emphasize that, like, I guess a verbal contract ain't worth the paper it's written on. Like, it's important to write things down. And I actually know somebody who lost a science copyright or science intellectual property lawsuit because the lab did not write down what they did in the lab.
Wow.
So
yeah.
Anyway.
And I do think that from a teacher perspective is super helpful, because as I'm walking around the room, or in this case, scrolling through your breakout rooms, there's a particular idea that I'm thinking about. Oh, I really want to make sure that this idea gets surfaced in the conversation. And often students will then pick something entirely out of left field to share when you'd like chosen them on purpose because you wanted them to share that thing that they wrote down. And so having that accountability also from a teacher perspective of, I would like you to share the thing that you told me about, as opposed to this new thought that's in your head, which is also fantastic, just not really what I was planning on. Awesome. So behind the scenes for this activity was, I don't know if anybody tried, but you can't move this graph or this prompt that says, what do you notice? And you can't even like mess up my little bottom section. So I set up the whole slide and then picked what are the things that I don't want students to be able to change. Because often students will accidentally grab something, especially when multiple students are working together in the same slide. So I learned the spring that you can make things into this background so that way there's fewer things for students to mess with, which leads to slightly less chaos when you have lots of kids working on the same space. So I set up all the static parts of the slide first. I took a screenshot, and then I set that image as the background. And then you want to make sure you delete those static parts because they're now in the background. And then if you want something that students can type on, you have to add a text box on top. So like that text box you can move because that needs to be there, but at least there are fewer things now that students can accidentally change. So I can add my prompt here. And then I can say, here are 3 equations. And then I would put a bunch of equations, and then using whatever snipping tool you have built in, you take a screenshot. I don't know that you can actually see that I'm taking a screenshot, part of it, but I did. And I'm just saving it onto my desktop. And then I'm gonna choose the background right here. And I can choose an image. So if I use that screenshot as my image, then it'll just replace the entire background. So you can see that there's like clearly 2 layers of something happening here. So one of them is the original text box, and I can go through and delete that. And then this part up here is also the original text box. And since I have a theme that has a top, I just have to change my layout or my theme to be blank so that that way the header is disappeared. So now all of these things are things that I can't click on. And so I can add a text box on top of that and tell students to type into that space. And it's also helpful just when you have multiple kids working on the same space to add a border around it so they know which part they can click into. I always find that tricky. And so if you set a border, and you can even gray out this font color so that that way it's clear that they're supposed to type over that, then of this whole slide, the only thing that they can mess with is this one box, which is exactly what you want them to mess with. So that process just streamlines things a little bit, especially for your younger students who are clicking around and find things. And that allows us to do Notice and Wonder, certainly, but any sort of prompt. Any questions about that?
So you do one of these slides then for each breakout room that you are sending people into. So if you had 10 breakout rooms, you'd have 10 different slides, slide 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah, and it might depend on what you want to do. So I could imagine doing this as a whole class all together and giving students 1 minute of quiet think time and then having them all type into the same slide. Or if you're going to send kids into breakout rooms, then I would want to make a separate one for each breakout room, because if you're having a conversation within the breakout room, it's probably easier to do that. And I like having things all in one slide deck as opposed to sending students into separate documents, because then as a teacher, you have to go through and open a document for every single student. Right. But if you're in this space, then I can scroll through really quickly. And even like, if I wasn't in a particular one, I was able to see when the typing sort of slowed down. And that was when I clicked the button to say, all right, they seem to be ready. I'm gonna pull them back in from their breakout rooms. And so I definitely recommend having this set up where all of your slides are in the same space, because I think that that was just like a really hard part of the spring, was the number of documents that everybody was trying to keep track of. And yes. So, and you can even do this for individual student work. So you could put a student's name instead of a breakout room and have each student put their solution to a problem on a same set of slides, so that that way you can continue just scrolling through them rather than having to open 15 different documents. For something like Notice and Wonder, it's great that they can see what other students are writing. You just want to make sure that you're not doing that for like something that you definitely want to get independent work for.
Would you give a sentence sort of framed for this activity, or will it help?
Yeah, so this would definitely depend on what level students you're working with. So instead of saying the phrase, type in this box, sentence frames would be a great thing to put into that box instead.
Cool.
All right. So certainly you can do Notice and Wonder in lots of different spaces. I like the slides, but the work that Desmos has been doing, as we've been playing with the past few days, has been excellent as well. If you haven't seen this New York Times website, the New York Times has been posting a weekly graph, and they don't give you all the information about the graph. They just tell you a little bit, and then students notice, wonder, and try and predict what the headline is for the article that's related to that graph. And then at the end of the week, they release it. So Desmos has taken all of those notice and wonder prompts and put them into their fancier format so that that way there's a slide for each question. What do you notice? What do you wonder? And what's the headline? I encourage you to check those out. And certainly if you're hoping to streamline all of your things onto Desmos, you can do notice and wonder in that space as well. So now we're going to transition over to which one doesn't belong, another one of our sense-making routines. So I'm going to give you 1 minute to look at these images and think about which one of these doesn't belong and why. And if you have one idea, go ahead and think about, is there a reason why another one doesn't belong, or another reason why this one doesn't belong? All right. So in this case, we are going to share ideas on a Jamboard. So if you go to that link that I just put into the chat, it will pop you up to this Jamboard over here. And you want to use one of the sticky notes to put a reason why your image doesn't belong. And then as a whole team, we're going to work together to make sure that we have at least one reason for every image on the board. You can either double click on a sticky note that I made to edit it, or you can click on the sticky note button on the left to add your own sticky note. Uh-oh, did I give you the wrong link?
You gave me the one with the answers.
Yeah, I gave you the wrong link. I gave you
Like,
Monday's
wait.
link. I changed it in like 3 places, but I forgot to change it there. Sorry.
Like, wait,
You
I
can
already
read
thought of
everything
those
that Monday
things.
wrote, and then you can also check out this one where you have plenty of space to check out, to type your own. This is a problem with teaching multiple sections of the same class.
Wait, what? Okay.
All right, do we have at least one for every option? I think that we do. Great. So what about this routine? When and why do you use which one doesn't belong?
I think for similar reasons to the other routine, it's everyone can participate in it and have an answer. And there's lots of different ways to look at it.
If I use it as an intro or to a topic, it's a good way to get vocab in if they already know what some of the vocabulary that you want to introduce or define. They can do that already. I use that website all the time, wodb.ca, and so usually base it from there. Yeah.
I think off of the vocabulary, when you want kids to start seeing patterns or categorizing information, letting them use their own vocabulary before you introduce whatever that new category, the new word is for that category, can help them to see that they often understand the concept before you give them a math word for it.
Yeah, I definitely liked using this at the beginning of a unit to figure out what students knew and then build that layer of understanding before I started introducing the more complex ideas that I wanted to layer on top.
The most common vocab is thingy. Like that thingy. When it's a thingy.
But that's the best, right? Like kids are like searching for a word. They're like, I don't know how to describe this thing, but I'm noticing something. And then you get to be like, oh yeah, mathematicians also felt that need to have a word to describe that to me. And so here it is. All right, and thoughts about this format? How did you usually do a which one doesn't belong routine in your classrooms?
I think I've only done it either like projected and then small group conversation or partner conversation, or like on paper.
So you had each kid write on their own paper and then?
I've also used it to, sometimes I force them to actually find a reason for each of them, not just one. Because sometimes, oh, I know why that, the most obvious one, everybody can think of it. But then I sort of force them, I need you to find a reason why one doesn't belong with the others, and I need you to find a reason for each of them. The first time they hear that instruction, they will be confused. I'm like, what do you mean? And that sort of makes it a little bit more, I guess more explanation is needed from the teacher. But then once they do it, the next time that you actually say it, it's just easy.
Yeah, I was going to say the first couple of times I use this each year, I usually pick the one that is least intuitive and ask, did anybody pick B? And invariably somebody will have picked B. And everybody will look at them like they're crazy, and then they'll explain why, and I'll be, oh, that's very good. Yes, I see that. And then we'll continue down the road. Did anybody pick C? And several people will say that. And so I go from kind of that, it's not quite explicit instruction that every one of these is going to have some possibility. There are no wrong answers here. And then after they get used to this idea that when we do which one doesn't belong, there's going to be a reason why each of them doesn't belong, then I switch up how I do it. And so the third, fourth, and on times, I'll say, okay, figure out what you think, which one doesn't belong. We'll talk about that. I'll pick one person to kind of, why did you pick that one? And then I'll send them into small groups and have them do just what Han said. Now I want you in your small groups, find a reason why all of them could be the one that doesn't belong. But I think in middle school, it's helpful the first couple of times, again, to really make sure that everybody realizes there's no wrong answers here.
Yeah. And I think often students come into math class feeling like there is a correct answer. And so as many
Only
ways
one.
as we can reinforce that message of, no, actually, we would like to hear all of your ideas and all of them are valid so long as you can back them up, then that's a really important message for us to be continually sending.
Yeah, sometimes I actually explicitly tell them to think outside of the box. Like I don't, it's like, it doesn't, you know, sometimes it feels for them like I might be wrong, but then I'm like, nope, I want you to, it doesn't matter what it is, think outside the box, you know, like verbalize that. And people would, at some point they will be, you know, they will try to figure out a reason, however out there that reason is, as long as they can justify it. It becomes a competition then at that point. Who can think of the weirdest reason why it doesn't belong?
Nice. So my routine when I was in the classroom was actually to use sticky notes. It wasn't to use virtual sticky notes because we were in a physical space, but I had a display out in the hallway on the wall. And so as we started a new unit, then I would give a new which one doesn't belong for each unit. And I would have students write their ideas on the sticky notes and then go out into the hallway and stick them up. So this would not work in pandemic teaching because they would be too close to each other. But if we reach a point where students are allowed to stand in the same space again, it was really interesting to see like which ones got a large cluster of sticky notes around them. And also it was a thing that was out in the more public space of the school, which meant that I invited students who were passing or teachers who were passing by to grab a sticky note and add their own ideas as we went through. So I wanted to show you Jamboard, but this also does match how I use this in the classroom. So if you haven't played with Jamboard yet, you head over to jamboard.google.com. And in the bottom right corner, there's a plus sign for a new Jamboard. And then just like before, we can start with some sort of background image. In this case, I took screenshots of the 4 things from which one doesn't belong and use them from the curriculum. This does also allow you to put like a grid or lined paper as your background. The only way to type into a Jamboard is using the sticky note. Someone on Monday pointed out that if you do what I did and set up a bunch of sticky notes, then you run the risk of 2 students both choosing the same sticky note to type in, and there's nothing that alerts you of that. So I noticed that several of you were like grabbing a sticky note, moving it off to the side, and then typing in it, which was a good cue to other people that like, hey, this one's mine. Otherwise, you just teach students to add their own sticky notes so that that way you don't run that risk.
Oh, it happened to me.
Yeah. If you
I was
want
typing
it to be
something
visible,
and it didn't save. Yeah.
Oh no. If you want it to be visible, you have to type something into it. So I had said type here, and then it will stay on the screen. And then just like your other digital whiteboards, you've got your pen and your marker and your highlighter so that that way students can be doing some sketching and annotating on the space as well. And I had you all work on the same board, but I can add multiple different screens. If I want to do the same thing like we did for breakout rooms with Notice and Wonder, you could say that this is the screen for breakout room 1 and then have students be moving across. Questions about Jamboard?
So if we're using that, there would be a link that the kids would use to
Oh,
go
yeah.
to it. It's not just embedded within
Thank you.
Google Slides.
Right, so you can share with people just like you can in any other Google thing, and then you can change this so that that way anybody can edit it. Right now, as long as someone has the link, they can open it. And so then I would just want to make it so that anyone with the link can edit it. And so you could send it out via Google Classroom, or you could put it into the slides, or however you usually send information out. In this case, when we're synchronous on the chat, it's pretty easy, but you'd need some other way to do it if students were asynchronous.
Cool, thank you.
So you'd have to sort of explicitly say that the student has to add their own sticky note from the
Right,
left
so
side.
you either want to give them the instruction that says add a sticky note that does this, and like, you know, show a screenshot with this is where the sticky notes are, or set them up and then remind them to just like move them. Oh, and someone was saying too on Monday that you could put a student's name in each sticky note, and then they would just type in theirs, and that would also kind of serve as attendance for your class, so that that way if a student doesn't type in their sticky note, then you know that that student isn't present. And as soon as you made that one that had the whole class roster in it, you can just make a copy every time, so that that way you don't have to be going back in and typing all of your students' names every time you wanted to use a Jamboard.
It doesn't anonymize it, right? I'm just saying there's like Desmos, it doesn't have that.
Right. So if I couldn't see who was typing in any of these, but if you put their names on it, then you would know who it was. Yeah, you are just all anonymous creatures up here in my corner. All right. We have reached the point where you get to build your own thing. So you're welcome to use Jamboard or slides or whatever other thing that I have inspired you to think about. And you can do a notice and wonder, or which one doesn't belong, or another sense-making routine. And this list is going to have fewer things. There are lots of Desmos activities that are in this list of IM resources. There are not quite as many other things, but there are people who have set up slides that are meant to be interactive for students. So you can scroll through that curriculum enhancement document. The hub for IM resources is opening this week. So there's going to be this new community space where people are sharing illustrative math materials that they have created and setting up this library of information, so that that way you can find all of these resources and not just have this one document that doesn't have a lot of information in it. And I'm clicking and it's not changing. There we go. Okay. So if you would like to collaborate with someone for the next 10 minutes on something, then I can send you into a breakout room. Otherwise, you can turn off your camera to show me that you're working, and turn your camera back on if you have a question or a thing that you want to show me. And otherwise, I will see you in 10 minutes where we'll share out what we have created.
Tina, I have a question, Tina.
Yeah.
Oh, so if you're doing Jamboard, can you insert an image or no?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I just copied and pasted. So like I took a screenshot and then I hit copy and then I pasted.
Okay.
Know if there's another way to do that other than, oh yeah,
Okay.
here, add image. Can you see my screen?
Yeah. Okay.
There's this add image button down there, and then that popped up a window that I can either upload it or search for one.
Okay. All right. Got you. Thank you.
Yeah. All right, so take about 1 more minute. I know that was not a lot of time, but wherever you are, you're gonna pause in 1 minute.
Hi, Tina.
Hey.
I need to go to my link, put my
Let's check it out.
half done limit thing in there.
Oh, it doesn't accept your italics. That's so sad.
Wait, what?
I'm getting the HTML for italics.
So wait, you're saying you can't, you clicked on the link and it's, oh, that EM. All right, I guess I got to edit that out. Oh, well.
Yeah. It lets you type in really nice math, but apparently it doesn't let you type in very fancy fonts.
Okay.
So the doc that I pasted in is the document that we're using to share all of our co-created resources. So you want to add to whichever table. And if you're doing a Desmos activity, it's better to share the teacher Desmos link than the student Desmos link, so that that way people can both play and copy it if they would like to make their own version of it.
Okay. So should I just go into my teacher mode and then highlight my URL?
Yeah, whatever URL you have at the top is a shareable link, so that that way everybody can see it. Thanks, Elisa. All right,
The Jamboard
so
of Notice and Wonder, instead of doing a slide, it didn't work as well, but that's what I shared. I feel like the slides are much more conducive to that.
that's good learning, though. Now we've figured this out, that this is a thing that we wanted to try and that it didn't work quite as well. And so now we understand what we can do. Yeah, I feel like the summer is all about just trying all sorts of things and figuring out what might possibly be workable as we go into a whole new mode of teaching coming this fall. All right, so definitely make sure to drop all of those links into this shared resource page. I will drop that once more since we've got a whole slew of links going now. So that way everyone can check that out and see it later when they have a little bit more time, because I don't want to hold you past our allotted time for today. So as always, we have a very brief survey. We appreciate your time, both spent completing the survey as well as spent joining me this morning. And we will be here for 3 more weeks. So we have math talks next week, and then discussion and social emotional learning, which leads us pretty close into the start of the school year, which is mind-boggling. I cannot believe that August is starting this weekend, but I do feel like we might finally be transitioning from having no idea what's going on to having a slight idea of what's going on in the near future. So I'm looking forward to maybe knowing what the structure of school is in each of your schools by the time we hit the discussion aspect. We've definitely put those last on purpose. All right, so make sure to check out everything that everyone shared in that chat box and share questions. Feel free to email me at any point during the week. And I look forward to seeing you all next week.
Thanks, Tina.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Have a great day.